Hello, everyone. I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness, and I am very excited and honored about our guest today, Dr. Robyn Odegaard. She has done so many things, and she has so many fascinating stories that I'm not even going to read a bio because I would rather just speak with her. And let's bring her onto the stage. Welcome. So happy we're doing this.
Oh, and thank you, Julianne. I am so excited to be here.
I was thinking about how the best way to introduce you is, and there's videos and there's things. And I just thought, why don't we just jump right into conversation instead of wasting any time? I hope you don't mind, because I want people to look you up. I want people to go to your website. I want people to find you and learn more. But in our time together, I would love to start off with a really fun question. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you came from and where you are now? Now, I know that's a little bit of a loaded question because I know you, but yeah, let's hear what you want to share with us today.
All right, let's see how fast I can do this. All right, so grew up in a cult, married off at 18 to my first cousin, who was 11 years my senior. He moved me 3,000 miles away from home. So 3 weeks, I graduated from high school, got married, moved 3,000 miles away from home. That marriage was ridiculous. But 3 things I learned about him: not very bright, badly in debt, drug problem. Because he wasn't bright, he couldn't maintain the grooming that had been put in place by the cult, that you're just a woman, you can't make decisions, you're not very smart, all that stuff. Because he was in debt, he needed me to get a job. Married women in my family don't work. That was a big deal. 8.5 years later, and you're like, why did you stay? Because the last thing my dad said to me was, you're no longer welcome in my home as a single woman. So I stayed. And besides, I'm stubborn. Like, I made a commitment. I'm going to make it work. 8.5 years later, he threw me out. He told my dad it was because I was lazy. And my dad called and gave me the riot act and said, if you had been appropriately submissive, you would have been able to make it work. But I decided I was going to figure it out. And fortunately, my best friend had a place room I could move into. So that was really good. I learned later, I did not know this at the time, I learned later from my ex, he came back and wanted to try again. I laughed at him. And I said, you don't love me. And the last thing you said to me was, I don't love you. I don't want to be married to you. I don't want you living in my house. Never mind that house was a slab of concrete, plywood walls, and a tin roof. The grass grew under the wall in the bedroom. I was living on a catfish farm. Turns out what had actually happened is he had gotten himself involved with a drug cartel. And that cartel learned that he had good credit. Thank you, Robyn, for fixing my credit. And the drug cartel wanted to steal his identity, which they did do. He almost ended up in federal prison. Whew. But they needed me out of the way. Now, fortunately for me, they convinced my ex that I was holding him back and he could do better than me. And so he threw me out.
Oh, my goodness.
So if I ever write that book, it's going to be called, I'd like to thank the cartel for getting me out of the cult. At that point, I had to figure out, how do you make decisions? How do I adult? I'm 26 years old. I've never made a decision in my life. But I did have a job, and I started playing volleyball and ended up playing some competitive beach volleyball, which was a lot of fun. Then I made my own mistake. I made a narcissistic, closeted bisexual, 0 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend. He moved me up to Long Island and then took a job in London, England, and left me on Long Island. And at that point, I was just a pretty girl with a high school diploma. I couldn't get an interview. No one would talk to me. Wow. And so my then husband says to me, we don't need your silly money anyway. Why don't you just go to college? And as long as I was available to fly back and forth to Europe to host wine tastings and dinner parties and do hobnobby executive wife things, he didn't care. And so I ran his life and did that and got 3 degrees in 6 years.
That's remarkable.
Yep. And then I started my business and I had a, public speaking, corporate training, executive coaching business. And then that fell apart in COVID and I had to rebuild it. And that's how I ended up with the Mental MacGyver. And I do high performance business psychology and professional confidant work. And I should add, I am now married to a phenomenal man who's a very good partner for me.
Oh, I love that. And you have some interesting hobbies as well. For those of you who have not, go onto YouTube, check her out. Well, after you're done watching this, your TED Talks there. I mean, there's all kinds of amazing things that you can really dive in. But for those that are watching, now you understand why a bio would never quite do it justice. Like normally I have some sort of intro, but I thought, it's first of all, it's better coming straight from you because you're funny. And I love the title. Hopefully you write that book. Hopefully you
I
will.
know I do need to write it, because the only thing is, do I really want the cartel to come after me at this point? Is that a thing? I'm not sure.
I don't know, honestly. And you could just still be some silly person in there. I mean, I'm just grateful that they didn't decide that getting you out of the way meant taking you out.
Right, which
So
is, that's an option. That's
it's
definitely an
always an
option.
option. But here we are, and you're doing big things, and you are helping people in a major way. And, I would love for you to explain where Mental MacGyver came from and what it actually means, because I know, but not everybody that's watching does yet. And I think that will really explain, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So the work that I do is kind of in the space between executive coach and therapist and best friend, where it's super isolating and it's lonely and it's intellectually lonely and people don't have anybody to talk to. And the Mental MacGyver came from, I was talking to a client. He had just exited a very successful marketing and branding business. And we were coming to the end of the call. And he said to me, all you need is a button, some bubble gum, and some string, and you can make it work. And I laughed and I was like, yeah, I'm like a Mental MacGyver. And he got serious. He was like, that's exactly what you do. You take what's there and you make it work. And you do is that URL available? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you need to find out. So my husband owns a graphic design, website design. So while I'm on the Zoom with this client, I text my husband, hey, can you look at this, get this URL if it's available? And like 4 minutes go by and I get a ping, and it's my husband. Okay, so we own that URL. What are we doing with it?
I love that question. He just followed direction and then would ask questions after, because he understood the urgency, which I appreciate. But somebody such as yourself, and I've said this to you privately, but the way that you tell your story, you've worked through it. So nobody, at least me, I don't feel sorry for you in the slightest bit.
Yeah.
It's just facts at this point, and here you are now, and using it to your advantage. Like, hey, if I can get through this, not like in a better than you sort of a way, or like my problems were bigger than you sort of way, but more of just like, yeah, I understand difficult. I get difficult. I'm not a skinny trainer telling some morbidly obese person that how easy it is to get healthy. It's not the same thing. Like, I understand where you are. So I'm just curious, like this idea of Mental MacGyver, what are some things that you sort of notice with high level performance people that they kind of tend to miss about themselves, when like that they should take a look at, that you have to sort of MacGyver?
Yeah. So, well, my keynote, Take Out the Head Trash, How to Fight the Demons Keeping You Awake at 3 a.m., is kind of a culmination of things that I see regularly with my clients, which is head trash. And let's define head trash, because that's one of those things that everybody, when I say it, people know what it means. But when I ask, well, what does head trash mean to you? I get lots of different answers. So some things that people have said that kind of resonate and are often agreed upon: constant self-critical soundtrack that you're in your brain that kills your confidence. It hijacks your self-esteem. You might feel like you're being hounded by a mean voice in your head. The question I always ask is, whose voice is that? It's probably not yours. It's probably somebody else's. And then I notice they're in an emotionally abusive relationship with themselves.
Ooh, I'd like to highlight that a little bit, with themselves, because, we all realize that voice, or at least hopefully we realize that at some point, that we would never speak to somebody else that way, the way we speak to ourselves. And it really is abusive. I think that is like such an accurate description. But it's one thing to recognize it, and it's another thing to address it. Does it ever really go away, or do you learn how to manage?
Yes. So my voice has a name. I named her years ago, before I ever had a degree in psychology. Her name is Harriet. And Harriet is allowed to come along on the ride. Like, she's part of me. She gets to be part of the ride. She does not get to drive. She does not get to navigate.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, for me, even still, sometimes I have to recognize it's her voice, because it is internal.
Yeah.
We think, That's me. I believe that. And so I will ask my clients, do you believe the voice in your head?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the challenge. This is a simplification, but it works really well for understanding. Your brain basically has two pieces, your emotional brain and your logical brain. If you've ever been in an argument and then thought of the perfect thing to say 20 minutes later, you know that sometimes your logical brain gets overwhelmed by your emotional brain and doesn't function properly.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you are talking to yourself is you probably aren't actually saying words. It's probably feelings. It's probably emotions. There might be little thoughts sprinkled in, but it's concepts, not words.
Mm-hmm.
Your logical brain doesn't understand that. Your logical brain only does words. So have you ever had an experience where you're talking and you say something and you think, that sounds really dumb out loud?
Yes.
That's because it's the first time your logical brain had access to it. So when I'm talking to my clients and we're trying to understand this voice in their head, when they're talking to me about what they think, feel, hear, say, whatever's happening with their voice in their head, it might actually be the first time that their logical brain is getting access to it and they're talking through it.
I love that distinction. One of my personal mantras is I don't have to believe everything I think. I don't have to believe everything I think.
Absolutely.
I definitely am the queen of telling myself that. But I like that you're giving us different ways to sort of differentiate, because how do you know? I mean, it's one thing when you start to notice it, because there are certain people who are like, I don't have a constant conversation going on in my
Lucky
head.
them.
But yeah, well, that thought you just had that said you don't have one.
Right.
What did you think that was? No, I love that. But the other part that I really want to kind of dig into a little bit is, this idea of not making it wrong, but making her or him a part of you, but like you said, not the driver. Because do you think that some people, I know I've been guilty of this, tried to almost murder that person in my head, and that doesn't work either, because it's still a part of me. But
Yes.
what would you
I've
say to
actually
somebody?
had coaches give me that advice. You should kill her. And I'm like, yeah, let's not, no, let's not be that. Let's not do that. Because there are definitely, like, she is a voice of the trauma I've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's a lot of things that she says are from my past. And I've learned a lot from that experience. Would I repeat it? No. But I like who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge with that voice, that part of your brain that has all this trauma and negative stuff and things, and you're not enough and whatever, is recognizing the self-sabotage as it starts to happen. And self-sabotage can be a lot of different things. It can be imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It can be hyper-independence. I bet you didn't know that hyper-independence was a trauma response.
Oh. Wait, can I point all my fingers and thumbs at me?
If you are unwilling to ask for help or accept help or get people to support you because you don't trust them to do it right, it's probably indicative of the fact that at some point in your childhood, you could not trust the adults in your life to take care of you.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Have you noticed too, when people who have trauma, it's always like, oh, but mine's not as bad as so and so's. We do like this comparison.
Right. People have it worse, so I must be okay.
Yeah, I'm fine because Susie down the street, she like, look at what happened to her. What happened to me is nothing.
Yeah, it's not pie. There doesn't have to be enough to go around. Like, your trauma is legitimate. You have to work through it. Now, here's the thing, though, about any of these kind of behaviors, head trash, self-sabotage, trauma, whatever you want to attach it to. It is probably not your fault, but it is your problem.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I always compare it to the idea of somebody TPing my front yard. I didn't do that, but if I want it clean, I've got to pick it up, even though I'm not the cause of it.
Right. Which is why when I work with clients, is it informative for us to look at their past and kind of understand, this is why I'm carrying this baggage? Yes. But sticking in the past and being stuck there and say, well, my mother and my brother and my father, whoever, that's not helpful. You don't grow from the past. You learn, and then here's the thing, the present right now is the only thing you can control.
Mm-hmm.
So The current situation is a product of the past.
Mm-hmm.
The solution to the current situation is now, but the motivation to change the situation is in the future. So we have to drag the motivation from the future, that future self who is going to be so thankful that you're different, that you've healed, that you've gotten better, that you've changed, into the present and do the hard thing now. Because the easiest thing to do is to let today become a continuation of yesterday, and then tomorrow has no hope of being different.
Oh my gosh. All right. I've got those, I call them God bumps because I don't like goosebumps. I call them God bumps. Oh man, that just spoke to my soul. Are you living the same day over and over again?
Right? Some people live 50 years of the same day in a row.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I thank you for saying that because I've always I don't have an issue with therapy and therapists, but I also don't need to live there. So it's one thing to
Mm-hmm.
look at it and keep
Mm-hmm.
moving, but it's
Mm-hmm.
another thing to camp there indefinitely. So
You
amen
can
to
use the
that.
crap as fertilizer to grow. But once you're done, that's all it's good for. You can't get stuck
Yeah.
there.
Exactly. So I popped up below for everybody that's watching mentalmacgyver.com with also your QR code because I want everybody who's watching to have the chance to go and find out more about you and possibly work with you because I don't know about well you as in the collective audience, but Robyn, you have completely given me some food for thought and just ideas that maybe I've sort of felt but have never been able to put my logic brain to
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
verbalize in a proper way.
Well,
Oh
and you have to realize that insight, which is what we're doing today, insight fuels impact.
yes, yes, it does. Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. So coming up with that insight, recognizing your head trash,
Yeah.
learn whether you're a leader or an entrepreneur or parent, whatever you're doing, that insight is going to be what fuels your ability to create impact.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. And I'm just curious too, I look back and I hope this is going to be one of those things where people watching can learn from me. But I'm going to talk about me for a second and ask you a question. And so when I was younger, I had this thing about not being smart enough. I just figured I was not very intelligent, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know where that came from because I got exceptionally good grades and I was very far advanced in a lot of things. But for some reason, I felt like I had to prove that I was very intelligent. And so I decided to go to school to become a pharmacist. But living in Canada, you can't, as an American, you can't just go to pharmacology school. You have to get your doctorate in that, but you have to do your undergrad, like your bachelor's, in sciences. And so I did mine in biochemistry. And
I don't know if that's brave or stupid. All right.
that was stupid because you know what? The funny thing was, it took me so long to figure out, wow, I did that to prove how smart I was. How smart is that to not do it for me?
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on when people finally have these insights and realizations and then they start, at least me, I'm sure I'm not unique in this. It took me a while to not shame myself for not realizing it when I did. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we kind of look at that and as these things, these insights that we have, instead of making ourselves wrong for them, kind of celebrate and be like, huh, yeah, I see you now.
Yeah, isn't it funny how once we grow into the person we are today, we regret the person that it took to get here?
Yes. Oh, that's so
Like,
good.
that's why, I said at the beginning, I love who I am. So while I wouldn't repeat any of the nonsense that is my life, I also wouldn't change it. Because if I
Yeah.
change it, then I'm not who I am. So I guess what I'm saying is learn to embrace the person you had to be to become the person you are.
Oh, okay, that's a soundbite right there. We need to just cut that and use that on socials because I think that so many people are striving to get away from who they've been versus
Mm.
accepting who they've been and been thank that person, all those different iterations to get you where you are now. Doesn't make you worse than you were. It just is it's what it took.
Right. Exactly. It was just what we had to do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So we're running a little low on time. We've got about 4 minutes left, maybe five. What is something you wish I would have asked you that you would love to share with the audience?
Oh, well, you talked about my TEDx talk, and I think that we've talked a lot about ourselves and what we do and growing into who we are. But I think it's also important to talk about the people that you surround yourself with and who you choose to allow to be the voice outside of your head and
Mm-hmm.
what they say to you. My TEDx talk is about my struggle with imposter syndrome because I surrounded myself with the wrong people who didn't celebrate me. And so if you watch it, it's only 6 minutes long. It's not very long. But if you watch it, at the very end, I say, when you learn there's no water in a well, stop going there looking for a drink.
Yep.
And basically, what that means is pay attention to who you're surrounding yourself with. And if you need water and someone doesn't have water to give you, don't hate them for it. Like, okay, they don't have water to give you, but stop going there for water.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. And for those that are watching, we have the YouTube link or your what's it called? Handle. That's the word I'm looking for. The handle to go take a look at that. No, that's amazing. And the thing that I was very tempted to just play you that, but I thought I think I'd rather just speak with you because you have so much more knowledge, but encapsulates a lot of what you're talking about, but also a bit of your story too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's fun too to hear the audience sort of giggle here and there.
Yeah, it was
Because
fun to
it's
do.
almost,
That was a fun talk to give. The first time I applied to give a TEDx talk, I got rejected.
see, I mean, that's more common than people realize too, or they think I could never do that, so they don't even try.
I've written TEDx talks for people. It's not as complicated as people make it out to be. I mean, does it take effort? Does it take learning? Yes. Is it possible? Absolutely.
I love that so much. And I'm going to also put up your, what's it called? QR code again for those that are watching who prefer to work that way.
And you
Uh,
have to tell people that if they go to the mentalmacgyver.com, my website, and they go to the Just Me page and they scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a video of my little dog practicing her circus tricks.
oh, and you guys, I've seen the video. It's really good.
It's super cute. She's a great little dog.
I was impressed, but it was funny because my dog loves to bark at absolutely everything. So when he heard like any sort of that like command that sounded like it was for a dog,
He had
he's like,
opinions.
where is the dog? It's so funny.
Funny.
So you do have that commanding voice. But the other thing too that I wanted to share was like this idea of going from, because we don't have that much time, but what's one thing, the first thing that you think that people should look at when or try to in order to look at themselves? Because it's kind of like, where do you look if the lights are off? You don't really know where to start. But how
Mhm.
can you start to see things that you've never seen before? Is there a way or a tool that you like to teach?
So my website has the 5-point paradigm for creating success out of chaos. But my favorite question, bar none, what do you want to be different?
Ooh. Ooh, I
Because if
like
you can
that.
figure out what you want to be different, it'll give you a place to start.
Exactly. Ask better questions. That's something that I'm always talking about is like ask
Yeah.
better questions. If you don't like the answer, ask a better question.
Hmm. Don't ask why, ask what, ask how,
Yeah.
where, when, who. Don't ask why. Why is for
Well, the other
toddlers.
exactly. And the thing is the why is never satisfying anyway. It
You
never
can't
really
observe why. It's completely in your head. Why is an internal thing. Everything else is external. You can see it. I can talk. You can see it and work with it. Why is internal.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, we're just about out of time. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. You are a remarkable human being. I'm blessed to
Oh,
know you.
thank you.
And those of you that are watching, go to her website, go to her YouTube, get to know her even better because she is just such an amazing person.
Oh, thank you, Julianne. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you. And everyone, that is all the time that we have for today. I just want to say thank you for joining us, and we will be back again next week on Thursday. Until then, enjoy your week, everyone.